Well, welcome to our What's the Point conversations. Recently, we sat down with a few people who are part of Mosaic to talk specifically about what's the point of singleness, and what's the point of dating, and what's the point of marriage. Our hope at Mosaic is to have open conversations about relevant topics so that we can sharpen one another, so that we can learn from each other, so that this Mosaic family can grow stronger together as we follow Jesus. And at the end of this short video, we've provided some questions to hopefully catalyze your own conversations about these topics with other people that are a part of Mosaic. It is our hope that we can get fresh revelation from God together so that we can grow stronger and so that we can run after God's purposes for singleness, for dating, and for marriage. I hope you have a great time with this resource. God certainly has a point for marriage, but that doesn't mean it's always easy to understand. Ephesians 5 tells us that marriage is a mystery, and yet in the mystery, there's a beautiful picture of Christ and the church. Whether we're married and we need to grow in our revelation of God's point for marriage, or whether we're single and we are called to be supporters of the marriages in our midst, God has a point for each one of us in marriage. Jennifer. Now we're on.
Once it starts rolling, it's not going to stop for a while.
All right, here we go. Let's see. So, Jennifer, what is God's point for marriage?
Oh, God has so many points for marriage, but his main one is to reflect his love for the church. And he does that through his relationship with us. And in our interaction with our spouse, we get to reflect that back to the Lord. And so we get to see his character lived out through marriage. And I mean, just that deep trust, the fact that it's based on a covenant, that is a basis of trust. It is something that we choose into. It is unyielding. It's everlasting. It is unbreakable. And that's what Christ did for us. And so in Christ's death on the cross, he showed us that there's nothing that we can do. There's no sin we can, have in our life that he is not going to forgive us, that covenant's going to be broken. And that is what we enter into in marriage also. It's a trust-based relationship that we are choosing not to break.
Jim, what would you add?
Oh, yeah, that captures it. And I would just say, the beauty of it is that it is the opportunity for our closest relationship on earth. And it comes after, right? So we have a hierarchy of our relationship with God first, and then we have a very important second that we get to have this relationship that is our most important relationship on earth. And it's this opportunity to then jointly point each other to Jesus and into what he has for us, and to be that sort of partner who says and who encourages and sharpens and helps us say, here's who God made you. So anyway, it's this amazing opportunity to have that closest earthly relationship.
Hillary, what would you add? How would you describe God's point for marriage?
Yeah, I love that. I think you're right about the bride and the bridegroom, the church and Jesus, and just that relationship that in marriage you get to see little glimpses of just the beauty of God's love for the church and how powerful that union really is. And also I would add that you get to have a partner where you get to serve God together. You get to run the race together that he's marked out for you. And you get to do that in unity with one another. And so you've got, whether you have different giftings, but they can complement each other, whether you are serving in different ways, maybe different careers, or maybe the same, like maybe you're in ministry together and you get to be unified in that with the other person, or like supporting another person opposite, and you get to serve God together. And I think there's power in that. I've seen it displayed so many different times where I'm like, wow, this married couple is leading worship together. And I'm like, there is something on that. This is heavenly. This is not like just one person with the guitar and just strumming along, but there is like a connection in the unity of that. And also seeing teams of people together in unity. But I think there's something about marriage that, the bond from two people choosing to be mutually submitted to each other and then submitted to God in the process. It's powerful.
Yeah, so good. Dawn.
Yeah. Well, I think everyone has said really the most important things already. I think the outcome of that foundation that you're building with another person, it also provides a structure. One of the things that we are finding as we're traveling this journey together is that things change in life and unexpected things come up in life, and there are things that you could just never anticipate happening, but your marriage can be that structure that all of those things happen within, where there is a safe place, where there's somebody that you know is for you no matter what else is happening. And I think that's also a picture of our relationship with God, that there is a chance for us to be vulnerable with the Lord and be vulnerable with our spouse, and be able to really see transformation and see healing within that structure. And the covenant around that is what provides that safety and security for that to happen.
I just add that, what I loved about this morning's message from Pastor Andrew Franklin was all about humility. And I was thinking about this the other day. It's like, why couldn't God have created people in such a way as that they had everything they needed on earth? And he didn't. We see that we're created with sort of gaps in us that a partner, a mate, a spouse completes. And this is what Genesis 1 was all about, that there's a partner in Dawn that I have that makes me more complete, that's suitable, that's complementary to me and the weaknesses that I have. And it's for my humility, because if I was completely 100% self-sustaining on earth, I wouldn't need anybody, and I'd be much more susceptible to the pride of life and all the other things that come with it, So the fact that I'm not, the fact that Dawn is where I'm not, is a sense of God's plan for me to learn and grow in humility as I grow in Him.
It's really great. And each of you touched on the connection in marriage between our relationship with God. And I wonder what you've experienced or what you've seen others experience that help a marriage to thrive. Like what are even practical things where you've seen God's purposes for marriage really thrive inside of a marriage? What can lead to that in a marriage? Jim, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think one kind of primary, kind of principle and then practical. So the principle is that this is, the second priority that God has ordained for us, beyond our relationship with Him. And so it means then that so that's the principle, and then the practical is then we need to program that into our life, and so our time in particular, our energy and our affections need to just reflect that principle. And so for us, really, as folks who we feel like we have a full calendar, that means that we need to put into the calendar time to be together. And that is a date night each week. Super practically, that means a date night each week. It also means, putting into the calendar time to ensure that we have the opportunity to connect at the end of an evening. And so those practicals are really, really useful in order to reflect that principle that we need to, that it's the most important relationship that we have.
Mm-hmm. Jennifer, anything to add?
Yeah, I think that's right on, and this has been trial and error, and we're really pushing into this right now. I think another piece is really leaning in to support one another. So when this year has really taught us this past year, of when one of us is just pouring out and the tank is running on empty, not being hesitant for that supporting partner in that moment to just be dumping in, knowing that our reserve tank of the supporting partner is being fueled by Jesus's love, and that's not going to run out. And so not holding back when you're both feeling, low and almost on empty, not holding back whatever you can give to each other, because we've got a deeper tank and a deeper well that's being filled.
Amen.
Great. Hillary, you mentioned the fruit of marriages that you'd experienced, particularly in worship, just seeing the unity and the power of God. Are there other areas where you've seen thriving happening in marriages?
Yeah, absolutely. I think about prayer, seeing two people married, praying with one another, just like an in sync, not Backstreet Boys, just kidding. Just an in sync together that you're like, whoa, you guys are tracking with each other. And I don't know, almost, if you think about marriages, like you're one now, is it one prayer? Now that the two of you are praying together, like that's a really cool picture. If you think about your words weaving together to be one prayer to God, that's inspiring. I think hospitality, I've definitely seen that, people inviting you into their homes, and I'm like, you guys you're in this together, not one person focused on it, but then both seeing the vision and the value of hosting someone into their house, or creating a dinner for someone, or even having just someone over for coffee, that we want you to be seen, we want to say you belong here, and we're doing this together in one accord in a way that is like, wow, I receive that unity in a really unique way. And I'm like, I can tell whenever one person kind of goes into the back room and the other person like, oh no, I'm just here for you. I'm like, no, I want to come back out, play games with us, and no, there's something about that hospitable home where maybe they're on mission together in that way. I think even evangelism is another good one. I'm seeing different couples go out, or getting able to be paired with them in a little trio. Okay, go out and share the gospel. And it's been really neat just to be that little sidekick. Oh, I love seeing how you guys get to riff off each other, and remember whenever God told you about that thing, and then, oh, tell them about that. And you're like, yes, exactly. So everything that you're doing for the glory of God, doing it with your spouse, and I've just seen people really thrive in the giftings that God has given them individually, but even seeing them identify, this is what God has given us together to then serve Him. It could be as simple as, I don't know, putting out chairs, but it can also be really unique and special for the ways that they are serving. Even leadership too. I think you and Carrie are a great example of leading together in a way that you support one another and balance that. You watch the kids while she's preaching, and I'm like, that is really neat that you change off these different roles, or obviously vice versa. But yeah, I think that's neat whenever there's a common denominator. If we've chosen to serve God in this way and we're both fully on board, that's not just your thing, it's our thing.
That's great. All right, Dawn, 37 years.
I know. Gosh, sum it up, right?
How do we thrive? How do we thrive?
I think I'm going to take a little different tack than what the others have shared. It's all 100% true, but we're trying to cover a broad spectrum here. So I think sometimes thriving is actually about being willing to go through the hard things together as well. And some of the times where we have been the closest is when our circumstances have been the most difficult. And having that person with you in the difficult circumstances and looking them in the eye and saying, we're going to be okay. We're going to get through this. Yeah. Jesus is still on the throne, no matter what else is happening around us. Right. And sometimes thriving really looks like just hanging on. And that we have to have that part too. And when I think about that word thrive, I always think of a plant. I don't know why. I don't think about humans. We do thrive too. But I think of it probably because I'm not very good with plants, to be honest. How do I make it thrive? I don't know. But some of the process with the plant is there is a winter season. There is the season where what's happening on the top doesn't look so fabulous. But underneath, the roots are getting stronger. And it's the season for that. It's the season for going deep. It's the season for nourishing the foundation. And I think not feeling that somehow you're failing or that things are not what they should be, they're too hard, when you're in one of those root development seasons. And just really holding on to each other in the process wherever you are.
Yeah, I would just add, your marriage isn't just one thing. It's many things, and as Dawn said, 37 years together, we haven't had just one marriage. we've had about 5 marriages in the 37 years. We really have, I mean, Ephesians 2 says that we are God's workmanship. We're created in Christ for good works, that we would walk in them, that He prepared beforehand, and we're a workmanship. We're a piece of work that God is doing over time, not just as individuals, but as a couple as well, as a marriage. And just knowing that you don't have to have it all sorted out today, because you're going to change. Mm-hmm. You're going to be a different person 5 or 10 years from now than you were 5 or 10 years ago.
Like it or not.
Yeah. And things will change, and you're going through this journey together, and your marriage is going to change. And so thriving is all about working through the changing seasons, not only of a given year, but a whole lifetime together, and doing it with God in the center, knowing that He's working on you. He's working on you individually, He's working on your marriage as well. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
That's great. So, yes, let's talk candidly about some challenges. There are challenges in marriage. What are they? Could you just spend a few minutes talking about challenges that you've seen in marriages? Hillary, why don't we start with you?
Oh dear.
What?
Did not see that going that way. Like looking out the window. Okay. I'm so sorry. Challenges, yes. I think, let's back it up to even engagement. I've seen people get engaged, find their spouse in the church, and then leave. And it's just been it's sad. And I think it's like your goal was off there. Were you here just to find a spouse? And now do you not need the body of Christ? And so I think isolation is a huge challenge, where you pull away because you're like, okay, I got mine, peace. And no, how do you tend to this relationship that you've been given by God? It's a blessing, it's extra, it's above. You did not promise you that. It's actually above and beyond, because God is just that loving. And how do you stay integrated into the church? How do you stay integrated in community and friendships and relationships, and don't just pull yourself away and isolate yourself? And I think we all know hiddenness is such a scheme of the enemy. Live in the light and allow us to be a part of this. And so I've definitely seen that, and it breaks my heart, and it's really hard. I've also seen it been done right, but we're talking about challenges.
Yeah,
so.
no, that's very insightful. Jennifer, challenges?
Yes, they are there. I think, as Mark was saying, how, you're not the same person that you were 5 years ago. So, I hope a lot of that is positive, but there's also the way of you're with the most comfortable person in your life. And so you can slip into these unhealthy patterns of, different habits and not putting your best foot forward, and impatience and all of that. And it's the perfect breeding ground for the enemy to just start sparking all of these frustrations and impatience and, greed and apathy and, whatever it might be. And I think that is, especially, as every year passes in a marriage, it can become more and more of just a downfall of this world. And so I think that a huge thing for us has been just continuing to hone in and refine, especially our communication, to be sure that we are speaking from a place that resembles God's love that we have for one another, and being careful with our words, because they're also the most impactful words. I think another big thing that Jim has been teaching me over the years is just always give each other the benefit of the doubt. If in doubt, the intention is good. And so whether or not that's communicated positively or not, but I think just being sensitive with each other, and yeah.
I would just add that so related to that, and related to Mark's point that we're going to have multiple seasons of marriage. I think one of the biggest challenges is also in the beauty that Dawn was talking about, that there's this beautiful foundation of commitment that we have, right? So we have this beautiful foundation of commitment, and I know that you are not going anywhere no matter what, and the risk is that breeds complacency. And because I know you're not going anywhere. I could do anything. You're not going anywhere, and that could breed complacency. And so I think that the getting over that challenge then is just that reminder of this is the most important human relationship that we have, even though we could choose to be complacent. That's not what God has for us, right?
Yeah.
To thrive in this most important relationship, we have to continue to grow and recognize that we're going to be different people, we're going to be in different seasons, and we just need to press into those places, even when at times it's uncomfortable growth.
Great. Dawn?
Yeah. I think for us, our challenges started right from the beginning because both of us came from non-Christian homes. Both of us came from families that we were children when our parents divorced. And so there was a whole understanding of what we knew we didn't want, but we didn't necessarily know what it looked like to build what we did want. So I feel like we have been overcoming challenges from the beginning, and we're still overcoming challenges. The good thing is the Lord really helps us with that. He does not just kind of wind us up and set us on our way. He's in the midst. And I think the most important thing when you're facing difficulties in the relationship is to really remember first that your responsibility for how you respond to your spouse is before the Lord, more than it's to Mark. So who I am in the relationship still really matters to Jesus even after all these years. And I think that's important. For us, looking at people who have been married longer and were farther down the road was a big help to us. And we had a couple in our life for a long time that were amazing examples of this. And they had two sayings that we picked up. It's only been like 10 or 15 years ago. So it's not that, we were a long way down the road before we got these things. So let me just give them to you now. It'll be easier. And the first one is really very similar to what you guys said. But the way that they said it was hold fast to the assumption of goodwill. And that goes a long way because that complacency, that familiarity can be like, well, what did you mean by that? Well, what did that look on your face mean? Wait a minute. Instead of just not taking everything personally, believing that your spouse is actually trying to do something good, not trying to irritate you. Because, we're all human. We can rub each other the wrong way now and then. And the other thing that they said that I think was so good is actually from Proverbs, and the scripture is, never let kindness leave you. And that also goes to what you were saying, that we don't get so familiar and comfortable that we speak in a way or we behave in a way with our spouse that we wouldn't do with somebody on the street that we don't even know. That we stop saying, excuse me, when you bump into them, that you stop, just common courtesy things, just hold on to kindness. And I think it goes a long way to not give yourself permission because you're in a safe, secure relationship to just be fleshy, to just kind of do whatever you think or feel, but hold that accountability before the Lord about who you are in this relationship.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about marriage in general, the big five generally are the challenges, communication, sex, money, in-laws, and children.
We have all of those.
Yeah. And those are all good, but they're also challenging, right?
Yeah.
And what I think I find is that the biggest challenge in my marriage is me, right? What each of us brings into the marriage is both a blessing and a challenge. And, if we let God into the deepest part of ourselves to really shape us into His image, that'll be the best thing we can do to overcome the challenges in our marriage. And, Dawn mentioned it before, we don't come from a Christian background, and most couples will, well, not most couples, let me see, ideally, us as a couple would have had just two marriage combinations in our lives growing up to look to, okay? My parents and her parents.
Yeah.
And that would have been the two. In our case, it was 8 because between our mothers and fathers, there's 8 marriage combinations. So we had a lot of challenges going into it from the very beginning, and overcoming those has really, at the cross we find salvation, but I'm still who I am, in my nature, my personality, my character, and just takes a lifetime of letting Jesus change that. And so that's just after 37 years, you still continue to ask God, please change me, Lord. And if we just all do that, I think we'll have much stronger marriages. issues.
Yeah. Great.
Can I add one quick thing of like an
course.
outsider looking in? I think idolizing marriage is a huge problem. It's a huge challenge. Like and maybe it's the pre or during and you're just like, wait, this isn't what I expected it to be. And people get into marriage and think, wait, I thought this was it. I thought I won the grand prize here, but no, I'm still just as broken. I'm still in the problem. You didn't solve my issues. And I'm still me. Okay. So just making it an idol, I think whether you are married or not, is a huge challenge that is really real.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for adding that. I want to just ask one last question about just advice. And I'd like for each of you to give advice to a married couple or maybe even someone considering marriage. Like what advice would you give about marriage after these years and these experiences that you've had? And Hillary, I want to tailor your question. I'd like for you to give advice to married couples about interacting with singles. So why don't can we start with you? Like, what advice would you give to married couples about interacting and just even having relationships with singles?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is you don't need to fix us. We are not broken. And that's coming from a little bit of saltiness, but mostly good. Of like, the conversations of like, oh, well, that's okay. Please don't say that. Oh, well, one day. Or, I'm praying for you, bless your soul. All those things. You're like, please don't do that. And it's not a problem to be fixed. So, and I think most people have really good intentions, but the way it comes across is a little rough around the edges. And so I think that's great advice. Don't try and fix a problem that's not a problem. And also, people, I want to honor people that are willing to be brave enough to say, I actually do want to be married one day. And that's actually not a shameful thing. That's a really powerful thing. And so it's a funny line, I think, for a married couple of like, I'm not trying to like fix your problems, but I'm actually wanting to engage in your life. And so don't also ignore that, So if you do know someone, step them up. Or if you do like have an encouragement for them, give it to them. So I think it's a funny balance of not trying to solve the problem, but also engaging with it. Of that truly, if that is the desire of their heart, then please, let's talk about that. Meet them in that, whether it's celebrating a first date, or if it's mourning a breakup, or if it's just giving, advice. Do it. Don't withhold that. I think also, what Jim was saying earlier of letting people inside your world. I want to see what people's behind their front door. What is that like to have 4 kids? Golly, that is not my life. My life is quiet and calm, and I light a candle, and I have dinner, but glass of wine, See, I don't know that. So let people into your quote unquote mess, and let us be a part of that. So yeah.
Great. It's great. Jennifer, what advice would you give to a married couple?
Find Hillary's. Truly, one piece of advice would be to surround yourself with other singles, couples without children, and families and people, as Dawn said, who are a step ahead of you in life, that you admire how they are doing it, and watch and take notes and get them to give input and support and encouragement. And again, it's from all different walks of life, because as Hillary was sharing, she can come in with this fresh perspective of why do you do it this way? And we're like, well, I don't know, after 14 years, why do we do it this way? And it's a great reflection, or comes in with incredible, spiritual wisdom. And then you need, like Donna and Mark said, the people ahead of you who are they did it. They're doing it. They're still doing it. And this is, post-children. And so how do we get through this phase? And this church, 7 years ago, has been the biggest gift for us on this, is just finding people to walk with on this journey.
I would have said the same thing, which is, invest in other people who will then invest and speak into you. And it only happens if you have a real, authentic relationship that is deep and real. But you said that, so I'll say something different too, which is I think Hillary was right on, like, do not make marriage an idol, and give it the priority that God has ordained to it. And ensure then that like flows through to how your life is structured, and start that before you have children. It only gets harder after that. The demands and the pressures are only harder. And so give it the priority, program that into your life and how you spend your time, and create that set of sort of habits and practices, because that will set the foundation for thriving.
Yeah. So I think I have two answers. You're surprised, I know. The first one is to people before they're married or when they're first starting out, is not to fall into the trap of thinking that your marriage is like a romantic movie. It's not a rom-com. It's not a romantic movie. It is much more like a journey around the world. So we all love the idea, well, at least I do, of traveling and going around the whole world. But if you actually go on a journey around the whole world, there are going to be some places you get to that are not your favorite. You don't like it there. That's okay, because there's another place coming.
Airport security.
Airport security. Mark is so impatient in airport security. He's very patient the rest of the time, and there's like, he almost gets like non-cooperative on purpose because it just drives him crazy.
Get to the beach.
Right? So that totally. So if you think of it like it's a long journey, you're going to go through a lot of places, and it's awesome. But keep in mind that the people, the treasures, the adventures, the things that you learn along the way are worth it. So when you're in that place that's not fabulous, hang in there. Another place is coming, and it's all worth the investment. But having that right expectation in the beginning helps. The second part is for people that have been married a bit longer. My advice is not to live in your spouse's head. Because when you have been watching somebody every day for many, many years, they don't necessarily have to tell you what they're thinking. Right? I mean, you can see it all over their face. You can tell by the body language. You know what time of day it is. You know where their brain is. But that does not give them the opportunity to grow in the Lord. If you just know that and you react, and this is me, I'm guilty of this. Okay, I can see where this is going. I know what he's thinking. And I'm already reacting before he's had a chance to moderate that with the Lord, before he's had a chance to go, okay, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to respond differently. And the same for Mark with me. You know, who I was when I was 25 is a little different than who I am now. And I am more patient, and I am less reactionary, and those kinds of things. And so don't live in your spouse's head. Give them the opportunity to process, to grow. And when they say something, believe them and respond to their words and their actions, not just your assumptions or even your history of what you know. Because otherwise we freeze each other in time, and that's not good. So give them space to grow.
I love what Jim said, I don't know, about 10 minutes ago or so, that, divorce, bring up the D word, it's not an option, He said both he and Jennifer are going to be there, no matter what, when and where, they're going to be there, right? And in your marriage, you have to burn the boats. You have to say, there's no turning back, there are no other options. We will choose, and it is a choice, sometimes it's a choice every day, we will choose to be together for the rest of our lives until, Jesus takes one of us. And that's so important to really sort of anchor that commitment in your heart, not just as a means of saying it because it was part of your vows on your wedding day, but really to say to God, Lord, I commit to you that this person you've given me in my life, I'm gonna love them and honor them the same way I love and honor you until I die. So if you haven't done that, like if you haven't really and truly anchored that part of your relationship, burn the boats now. It'll benefit you in the years ahead. Other thing I would say is make some altars along the way. You know, in the Old Testament, whenever God did something really amazing, they didn't just go, oh, that was cool, and then move on to something else, right? They said, whoa, let's take a minute. Let's remember what God did here. Let's build an altar. Let's pile up some stones. Why? So that in the future, when our kids say, what happened there? You have a story to tell. And if you build those altars in your marriage, in your life, in your walk with God, you will then be able to later on go, yeah, it was really tough when we didn't have any money. It was really tough when we felt like, you know, this was the end of our life. It was really tough. But God brought us through it.
Yeah.
So building those altars can really anchor your marriage identity in something far beyond yourself in order to look back and say, I know God did it before and I know He'll do it again.
Yeah.
It's good.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And there's so much more still for us to talk about. That's why in just a minute, we're going to put some questions on the screen. And our hope is that you, as a group or whoever you're with, can sit and use those questions to dive deeper into this topic. You know, for the purpose of this conversation, I just want to give us some handrails. We're talking about singleness and dating and marriage using the definition that God gives us for marriage. Although these are important conversations, today we're not talking about homosexuality, we're not talking about gender identity, we're not talking about polygamy. We're talking about God's point for singleness, dating, and marriage within God's definition for marriage. You know, God defines marriage in the Bible as one man and one woman entering a covenant relationship that's intended for a lifetime. And there is so much that we have yet to learn and to grow in just understanding and running after God's point for God's definition of marriage. So those are the handrails we're using. Hopefully that can narrow in the conversation so that it can be most helpful and fruitful for all of us. I hope you have a great time learning from one another and sharing with each other. And my prayer is that this leads to growth and depth and hope as we run after God's purposes together. We'll put those questions up for you right now.